everybody who was a part of this thing in their first year with whatever the hell that was, redo. Okay? Redo. New coaching staff, new system, new terminology, new assistants, new position coaches, redo. And hope to God a new offensive line. I mean, just so much is predicated on that. Which brings us to this conversation about my hardline stance last week. Don't take anything but an offensive tackle at 7 or God help you, right? I'm not going to incite the riot for you, but I'll turn the other way. I'll turn a blind eye if Titans fans start a riot if the team doesn't pick a tackle at 7. That's what I told you last week. And I'm watching Jared Goff have protection. I'm watching Lamar have protection. I'm watching Mahomes have protection. Protection that matters. Offensive line play matters. I don't need to emphasize that to you. You know how bad it has been, how much it's devolved over the course of the last 3 seasons, and how much rebuilding that organically through the draft matters. All that to say, 7, number 7 overall, does it absolutely, 100% have to be an offensive tackle? I'm watching Penei Sewell block for Jared Goff, and I'm watching Josh Reynolds drop passes.
And you're watching what Jamar Chase has done over the course of the last 3 years.
Where he's always open. And he makes the quarterback right. I'm watching Hopkins this year. He doesn't have any protection. The quarterback play is average to below average, no matter who's back there. Rookie Levis, veteran Tannehill, Willis lost and running all over the place. But Hopkins makes the quarterback right more often than not. And he does so with bad protection in front of the quarterback. It's a lesser of two evils discussion. And I'm still, if the best left tackle on the board is available to you at 7, so help me God, you take him. But I'm not as hard-lined about it as I was a week ago, having watched this weekend of football play out. It doesn't matter if you have the protection if the players downfield can't make the plays. If they're not there to come up for you big in those moments. If MVS does not make a substantial improvement in the postseason, how many of these great Mahomes closing moments matter down the stretch? Because he's got the protection. But the skill position player still needs to make the play. Dan Campbell, the discussion around him is different if Josh Reynolds comes up with that 4th and 2. There's no perfect way to answer the question. You have to find ways to win. You can't have the best talent across the board. This is not Alabama or Georgia in college. You have to find places to do more with less. But I'm just not as entrenched in my position, even as I still want them to take at least 3 offensive linemen in this draft class with 8 draft picks. I'm not, like, if they traded out of 7, took a tackle in the 2nd round, and somehow found their way into Malik Neighbors or something like that, I'm not going to be overwhelming. I'm not going to be like 100% sold on it because, of course, their offensive line will still have questions. But at least I see what they're trying to get accomplished, and I understand the value of just reliable playmakers down the field, even when the protection is not always reliable.
Well, we have this conversation because we know what Brian Callahan prioritizes offensively in the passing game, and we look back, obviously, at 2021, taking Jamar Chase over Penei Sewell at 5, despite a desperate need at that spot for the Bengals at that time. But that is the example that we cite, right? That Callahan was a part of that staff. They chose the receiver need, and it obviously paid off for them. But how much of a special case was that? Top 5 pick, Jamar Chase, elite. I mean, Jamar Chase didn't play a snap the year before and was still considered the top wide receiver prospect in that draft.
It was questioned media-wise. Football people would tell you, no, there was never any dispute about what Jamar Chase was going to be, right? Because we all talked about He's had a year off football.
Yeah,
Caleb Farley, a year off football, right?
Devontae Smith just won the Heisman. I mean, he just had this crazy year for Alabama in the COVID year. Still, Jamar Chase, the best prospect in that draft. And then on top of that,
he played college football with
the LSU connection and how much we know now Brian Callahan and that staff prioritize putting players in comfortable position. What better way to make Joe Burrow comfortable than bringing in his old pal and his number one target in college, Jamar Chase, who happens to be the best prospect at his position in this draft.
You want to find a Kelsey for your Mahomes.
Right.
You want to find a Waddle for your Tua. You want to find a Chase for your Burrow. You just things, because it's not always going to be comfortable in the pocket. In the NFL, you're going to have to deal with muddy pockets, like the protection, whether it's because you've got better defensive linemen than you do offensive linemen in today's league. Things that you can do to mitigate the lack of 100% of the time clean pockets, off schedule plays, red zone type stuff, right? Where Brian Callahan, we've played that audio before, we've talked about his quote saying that's the place where you create the most off script. And how can you have that mind meld with a level of skill position player like Levis and Hopkins seem to be developing? But what else can you provide to Levis that's going to make him inherently comfortable? Now, you don't have one of those guys.
That's what I'm saying. You don't have that special case for Will Levis in this upcoming draft. Is Marvin Harrison Jr. going to be available at 7?
No.
The elite can't miss wide receiver prospect in this class.
So whomever you get for Levis is going to be a different discussion than is this Chase one, because you had that pre-existing connection. That helps so much. You cannot recreate reps. You cannot recreate these reps.
That probably pushed that decision over the top, right? Between Chase and Sewell.
Not having been in their draft room, I can only speculate that, yes, of course, 100% that pushed it over the top. It's not as clean here. Will Levis is not Joe Burrow. Not as a prospect, not as a heading into year 2 player. The Titans' offensive line is worse than the Bengals' offensive line, even though the Bengals didn't have a good offensive line in front of Burrow. They are the worst. But to hear Brian Callahan tell it, it's not just about the offensive lineman. And again, this is the correct answer to the question about solving the Titans' protection issues. This was Brian Callahan on Thursday at his introductory press conference.
There's a lot of things that go into protection. Some of it starts with as simple as you got to go win. You got to win versus tight coverage. Protection is an everybody problem. The quarterback's got to get rid of the ball on time. They have to work through progressions quickly. So to say that it's a specifically the offensive line needs to fix the protection problem, I don't agree with that. I think it's a holistic offensive issue if you have protection problems, and there's a lot of ways you can help weaknesses, highlight strengths, and everybody's involved in the process. As far as profiles of offensive linemen and players, obviously you're looking for the guys that are great at pass pro. You're looking for guys that can anchor, guys that got great length. We'll talk about all the traits at a later date, but schematically you can help a ton. You can chip, you can bang edges. Backs got to be fantastic in pass protection. They got to know who to block and how to block them. So it's a holistic offensive issue, and so our job is to find a way to make sure everyone knows all the specifics of what we're trying to get done, and then they can technically go execute it.
It's the right answer to the question, because you can't just solve it. Like, what they need to get done as a protection plan is not immediately solved by drafting a rookie left tackle. Even if they take the best left tackle at 7, he's still going to be a rookie left tackle in the NFL, going up against grown men with years of skill training, technique training, strength and conditioning. It's hard for rookie offensive linemen. So even if you do make that call, you are still going to have to compensate for certain deficiencies. That's why it's not as cut and dry at 7, and it took me this weekend watching more football to kind of come around on this point. It's not just as cut and dry as I wanted to make it, or I think as a lot of people are going to make it, which is no, you idiots, take the tackle at 7 no matter what.
Is that about to be the discussion in the lead up to the draft with this team specifically? Left tackle versus wide receiver for the next 3 months?
Should be. And then everybody lose their minds when they take an edge player. or Bowers, right? Brock Bowers. But, I mean, it's not like that. Like, I can't say with 100% confidence the Titans have a good tight end room. I know they got better as the season got on before Wiley got hurt, but anyway. Last call for phone calls, 615-737-1045. We'll update the polls. We'll take those. I'm Buck Rising. It's 1045 The Zone.